Next on the news at 10, a new study on religion in America. For the first time in the nation's history, the Protestant denomination is not the largest in the United States. Hear what local religious experts say is the cause. Plus, is a tennis facility a good $3 million investment for Alberta City? Both sides of the debate met tonight. Hear why some say it's more than a money issue. Richard?
Yeah, to make it coming up home team weather, kind of mild tonight. Upper 60s still out there, 66 in Tuscaloosa, 67 in Mobile. How about needing cool air back in the forecast? What about our next chance to rain? Will that arrive? Your forecast straight ahead. Stick around.
And it was the vice presidential candidates' turn to debate tonight, and they turned up the intensity. Hear from both sides next. The news at 10 begins now.
You're watching Alabama's WVUA News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Samika Alexander. City and county leaders have already offered up $3 million for a tennis facility at J.C. Park in Alberta City. But many Tuscaloosa residents came to the park today to discuss the plan with park and recreation officials. Some are expressing support, some have a few concerns, and some are just flat out against it. WVUA's Travis Leader has more in tonight's top story.
This is a public hearing to ask the community to come out and give us their input on this tennis project that we have that will be a part of J.C. Park.
And the input has been mixed throughout the initial steps of this $3 million project.
I was very pleased and excited about the possibilities because I think the community needs that. We also need the growth and development in the Alberta area.
I think the utilization of this area could serve more people in a better way.
One of the central points of the debate is a $3 million price tag. Some are asking why municipal leaders aren't spreading the wealth to other projects.
The $3 million is pretty exorbitant. I think, as you said, you could probably gotten a grant for a skateboard park. You could certainly use that money to develop Tuscaloosa and even do storm-related damage repairs.
But some say it's not about the initial price, it's about the long-term investment.
Those individuals will spend their dollars here as opposed to somewhere else. There also would be more opportunity and need for places to eat and places to stay.
Whether it's negative or positive, though, para officials welcome the turnout and input.
This is really a good turnout for a public hearing. A lot of times you have a public hearing and you may have 3 or 4 people show up, and we've had dozens show up.
In Tuscaloosa, Travis Leader, WVUA News.
The project may not stop at $3 million. Tennis advocates hope the city funds a phase 2 project, which would increase the number of courts from 17 to 34. The cost for the second phase would cost approximately $2 million more, which would make the total cost for the project $5 million. Well, election season is nearing an end, and one local race that is receiving a lot of attention is the probate judge race between incumbent Hardy McCollum and Sheriff Ted Sexton. In the last push of their campaigns, both Tuscaloosa County candidates are meeting with UA students to express their platforms and answer questions. Each of them will get 1-hour sessions to speak with students. Today was McCollum's turn. He spoke to students at Bibb Graves Hall. Meanwhile, Sheriff Ted Sexton will speak on October 25th at 3 p.m. at the Ferguson Center. Well, there are only 25 days left until the November general election, and if you haven't registered to vote, your time is running out. According to the Alabama Secretary of State, the deadline to register closes 10 days before an election, and if you're voting by an absentee ballot, it must be postmarked no later than the day prior to the election or hand-delivered to the absentee election manager by 5 p.m. on the day prior to the election. You can learn more at the Secretary of State website. For a shortcut, just go to our website, WVUATV.com, or call their office at the number on your screen, 334-242-7210. Well, ramp installation companies say polling places might not be accessible to disabled voters come November, even though federal law requires polling places to be accessible. Orders for ramps from local governments are down slightly. In 2008, one company retrofitted as many as 1,000 polling places so far this year. They've only had 600 to 800 orders. The founder of a wheelchair ramp rental company says he is hearing that money just isn't being spent this year. According to the Government Accountability Office, it's a persistent problem since only 27% of polling places were fully accessible for the last presidential election. Well, tonight, political eyes turn to the vice presidential candidates for their first debate. Current Vice President Joe Biden and Republican candidate Paul Ryan clashed on the debate stage in Danville, Kentucky. The focus was on foreign policy and domestic issues. Right out of the gate, the attack was the subject of the Libya attack, which was a major focus. Now, Ryan accused the president of waiting 2 weeks to acknowledge it as a terrorist attack and said the Obama administration was aware of the threat in Libya and did not do enough to protect it. Now, Joe Biden countered by saying Congressman Ryan cut the embassy security budget. Let's take a listen.
We should always stand up for peace, for democracy, for individual rights. And we should not be imposing these devastating defense cuts, because what that does when we equivocate on our values, when we show that we're cutting our own defense, it makes us more weak. It projects weakness, and when we look weak, our adversaries are much more willing to test us. They're more brazen in their attacks, and our allies are less willing to trust us.
With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey.
And why is that so?
Because not a single thing he said is accurate. First of all,
be specific.
I will be very specific. Number one, this lecture on embassy security. The congressman here cut embassy security in his budget by $300 million below what we asked for, number one.
Now, the next debate will take place on October 16th between the presidential candidates. Well, an election year that is like this one, matters of faith are often brought into the spotlight, and a new study shows some changes are happening in how Americans describe their own religious beliefs. The study shows that for the first time in American history, Protestants are no longer the majority religious group. WVUA's Daniel Sparkman has the details.
A study by the Pew Forum on Religion and Public Life shows that only 48% of the American population now identifies themselves as Protestants.
Well, there's been a decline in Protestantism over the last 20 years, so this continues that trend. The 48% number is probably scary to some church leaders. The study itself suggests, however, that it's the rise of the unaffiliated that is really the factor here.
The study shows that more than 19% of Americans consider themselves unaffiliated. Tuscaloosa religious leaders believe some who aren't affiliated with a denomination may still consider themselves Protestant.
I think maybe it may be misleading some of the articles we've seen, because I believe that majority of non-denominational are Protestant.
A lot of it probably has to do with the fact that there does seem to be a trend where a lot of people are, for a variety of reasons, moving away from institutional places of worship. And again, there's a bunch of reasons for that.
Professor of Religious Studies Theodore Trost agrees there are several reasons people are choosing not to affiliate.
One would be the increasing politicization of religious affiliation itself. Many of the non-affiliated people said they were tired of the culture wars. They're tired of the kinds of labels that get applied to them if they claim to be this or that in terms of religious affiliation, and so they choose not to affiliate.
Trost also says the U.S. could be seeing an increase in secularism, a concept where religious faith and worship are being rejected, that is increasing in Europe. Reporting in Tuscaloosa, Daniel Sparkman, WVUA News.
Trost added that in the South, the biggest decline in Protestantism is among young people. Well, turning now to the weather, let's get a first check on Alabama's home team forecast with Chief Meteorologist Richard Scott. Hey, Richard, nice day out there.
Hey, to make it a good Thursday night, too. Great day out there in terms of weather conditions. Now 63 in Tuscaloosa. Temperatures slowly starting to come down. It's not going to be all that cold tonight, but temperatures will likely drop about 5 to 10 degrees before we reach that low tomorrow morning. And no cloud cover, no rain across the immediate coverage area. The closest rain to us over Tennessee and extreme north Alabama. That's going to stay put through the day. Tomorrow will stay dry. Here's that bus stop forecast early tomorrow morning, around 53 on average, and a lot of sun and a cool start to the day, but a quick warming trend through the afternoon hours. Talk about how warm it's going to get. Plus, look at the weekend forecast. Weather straight ahead, so stick around.
Thanks, Richard. A sports broadcasting pioneer gave some insight to students at the University of Alabama today. George Bodenheimer started at ESPN as a mail worker, and he has since moved his way up to be the executive chairman for the entire company. He came to the Ferguson Theater today to tell his story and answer questions to students interested in sports broadcasting. The biggest message he gave is that people need to make career decisions, not money decisions, if they want to make it in the business and to never give up.
So I was really a pleasure to be here at the University of Alabama, hold the university in such high regard, great partners with ESPN. So to have a chance to be here and interact with all the students, seen hundreds today, it's been fantastic. A lot of great questions, a lot of enthusiasm, really good time.
The sports world is currently mourning the loss of college football commentator Bino Cook. Cook was 81 years old. It was announced today that he died in his sleep. Cook worked for ESPN since 1986. WVUA spoke with George Bodenheimer about this legendary man.
Well, the sports world has lost certainly one of its most unique and wonderful people. Bino Cook, never going to be another person like him. He loved college football, and that came through in everything he did. And he played a big part in everything he was involved in at Pittsburgh, ABC, ESPN, and many other organizations. He's going to be missed.
The Crimson Tide is getting ready to head to Columbia, Missouri for the first time since 1978. The Missouri Tigers are the new kids on the block in the SEC, and so far their record in the conference is 0-3, while the Crimson Tide remains undefeated and ranked #1 in the nation. Be sure to stick around because later in the newscast, our own Jennifer Edwards will give you a better look at the history behind this matchup. Meanwhile, this Saturday's game will be played at Memorial Stadium in Columbia, Missouri. Kickoff is scheduled for 2:30 p.m. and it will be televised on CBS. And speaking of champions, 4 champions of communication excellence received noteworthy honor tonight. 4 individuals now have the distinction of being members of the UA College of Communication and Information Sciences Hall of Fame. The 4 inductees include Robert E. Lucky III, Sue O. Medina, Joe Rumore, and Dolph Tillotson. The inductees' accomplishments span throughout the fields of radio, advertising, newspapers, and library accessibility. Other notable names in the Hall of Fame are Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Helen Keller, and Hugo Black.